So you're a fan of Mathmech, you've tried it out pure, you've tried it out with Adignisters, you've tried it out with Code Talkers, and you're thinking to yourself, could there possibly be another effective way of playing Mathmech? And this, there is. We have Dinomorphia Mathmech, which on the surface, I will grant you, does look a little bit silly. I understand that, but in terms of practical implementation, this deck is actually really good. So in terms of the synergy between the two, it's more of a they don't bother each other situation, while also having Small World as like a conjoining part. It's a lot like Kashtira Sword Soul, if that makes sense, in terms of their utility, but I think the overall mesh between these two are far greater than Kashtira and Sword Soul. The idea is that the only restrictions when it comes to Mathmech, when it comes to the Cybers cards in general, is that they lock you in the special summoning only Cybers cards, which to most decks would make them rather exclusive. However, Dinomorphia does not special summon at all during your turn unless you set an additional trap card. So the idea is that you're going to be able to use your full Cybers combo, sending your Sigma, doing all of those plays, while also simply normal summoning Phyresia, and that's going to give you full access to the entire sort of point of Dinomorphia, and that is the Rex term or potentially the Kentragina, depending on your preferences. We're playing the one of Brute, which is like the only sort of questionable card. I really think you could get away with just focusing on Domain and Frenzy, maybe even cutting down the number of copies of Domain because I don't think it's as good as Frenzy. But the idea behind the deck is you're going to be using the full Mathmech board, setting up this crazy sort of Cybers destructive board, you know, your Terahertz and your Super Factorial and all of that fun stuff, while also having Rex turn to act as a floodgate. And yeah, that's the general idea. It's really effective. I really enjoyed playing it. It does have its counters, it really does, and I'm going to be talking about some of those as well as having a replay showing it off. We have about 3 replays lined up so I can show you how the deck generally works in different situations, under different restrictions. And then we're going to do a card-for-card deck profile at the end, where I'm going to go through each card individually in the deck and talk about why it's there, what its purpose is, why are we not playing something else in that spot. So we're going to do all of that at the end of the video, but first we're going to do some replays. So if you're not familiar with the deck, or you just want to sort of see how it works, absolutely watch those first. If you're new to the channel, or potentially you're not new and just haven't subscribed, I would ask you to subscribe. It's the quickest, easiest, cheapest way to show support. Every little bit definitely adds up. So if you're in any way enjoying the content that we do here every single day, then why not subscribe? You know, you're not losing anything. I win, you win. Why not? You can also like the video if you enjoyed this particular deck profile, and check the description for all of our other social channels. But I'm not going to talk too much here at the beginning. Let's get right into the replays. Alright, getting into game 1 here, what I am going to very quickly note here is that the one thing that I can't show you in a replay is how often people surrender to this deck. Now, we're all very familiar with the concept of people surrendering upon seeing Circular. The same thing happens with Phyresia. You normal summon Phyresia and like 50% of people just immediately peace out. So you get a lot of wins through just surrendering because people don't know what they're playing against and don't want to know. We're going to go in here, they're going to go for Maxi off the rip, we're going to hit that with Call By. This is going to be a very straightforward turn here, nothing too fancy into the Mathmech mirror match. This is a Mathmech opponent we're against, so it is a decent deck here. We're going to go Small World, revealing Veiler, going into Circular. Veiler is sort of like your biggest Small World bridge because it links Circular to Phyresia, so if you can go from one into the other, as well as linking basically anything else into either one of the two, because it has 0 defense and it's a light attribute monster, making it the perfect bridge for both Phyresia and Circular. Gonna go Circular's effect here, gonna send the Sigma, summon the Sigma out of the field alongside Circular, triggering Circular's effect to grab ourselves a Super Factorial, of course. We already have Frenzy in hand, so we don't need to worry too much about going into Phyresia, and from here we're just raw Mathmech combo. Grabbing Diameter, we can use the Diameter normal summon since we already have Frenzy, we don't need Frenzy for anything. We're going to link 2 off into Splash Mage, and we're all familiar with the Mathmech combo, bringing back a monster, linking it off into the Link Decoder. That gives us our extra +1 when we eventually summon Transcode Talker. Transcode Talker triggering off the effect of Link Decoder, bringing itself back, using its own effect to summon the Splash Mage out. That's enough Link materials to be met with a Nibiru. Oh no! That's fucking toxic. So he hits us with the Nib, Maxi and Nib in hand like a fucking G. This guy really thinks he's it. But we have Factorial and we have Frenzy, so literally our whole board can just be summoned during our opponent's turn, right? That got our entire like end board, other than Terahertz, right? They're gonna go into Lingeribo, which admittedly I should have flipped up Super Factorial or Frenzy first. As soon as I saw the normal summon, I thought to myself, that's very weird. And then as soon as I let it resolve, I knew exactly what he was going to do, and it annoyed me. We're going to respond to the Parallel Exceed activation with Super Factorial. Again, I don't believe our opponent sticks around here, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. They are going to tribute that off. We're going to go Dinomorphia Frenzy as well, paying half our life points to Fusion Summon. So now, yes, he absolutely will stop the Super Factorial. However, in doing that, we've taken away his normal summon through the Linger Evo, and we've prevented Parallel Exceed. Parallel Exceed no longer has a link arrow to be summoned to, meaning it can't be used. We now have Kentragina on board. Kentragina pays the life points, going to Fusion Summon again, sending Phyresia and does another copy of itself with the Rex term. So now he cannot activate the effects of any monsters on the field who have greater attack points than I have life points, meaning at 2000 is where he's capped. No Transco, no Heat Soul, no Terahertz, no nothing. Gonna go Small World, mining, sending Microcoder, being met with an Ash Blossom, and that pretty much brings our opponent to their knees. Now, another very useful effect of the Rex term here is if they declare an attack, I can have my life points, and the attack points of all their monsters become equal to my current life points. So I bring his Nibiru down to 1k. Of course, that doesn't matter too much because it was attacking a 0 defense monster. But that's fine. It means that coming into this next turn here, we can actually get some game going. We're going to go Rex turn, paying half our life points again, summoning out the Sigma just because we can. Into the battle phase, taking out Nibiru for 3k, going 3k to the phase. We were 1,000 short of lethal, unfortunately, so that's why we summoned Sigma in defense. And again, we're simply going to pass turn. He can't activate any monsters on the field with 500 or more attack points. That means virtually his entire deck is dead, and we win the game. Easy as that. So there you go, playing through the Maxi and then the Nibiru shutting down our whole opening board, then using Linger Evo to shut down our Super Factorial, and we were still able to win the game. Normal Mathmech really would struggle with that sort of thing. But there you go. Easy game, let's get into game 2. Alright, this game's going to be a bit different, right? We're playing under very different circumstances here. They're just going to set 2 and pass, which you're going to be seeing is more than a little annoying, but we're going to go for it anyway. We have Fossil Dig in hand, so this is beautiful. We just grabbed Phyresia here. We've already got both Brute and Domain. They're going to flip up Skill Drain, which is a huge issue here. Luckily, Mathmech does have an ability to OTK through this, so we're still going to try and go for game here. Phyresia getting negated doesn't matter since we already have trap cards in hand. Sending Sigma to summon the Circular, summon back the Sigma. Now we're going to link one off in the Linger Evo. That's going to prevent him from using this other trap card because, for those who don't know, I actually played this game during a Discord call and the people in the call weren't entirely sure. But Linger Evo tributes itself as cost to activate its effect, which means by the time it comes to resolve and negate the trap card, it's no longer on the field. So it can actually prevent the activation of this other back row. We're simply going to swing for 15. There's not a lot of benefit in going too deep into any sort of combo right now, especially given that we have the Dinomorphia card, so we can actually make use of this. He sets 1, goes to end. They're going to go Shifter. In response to Shifter, we're going to go Frenzy here. Frenzy then, we're basically just going to put a whole bunch of big beaters on our board here, and the one thing about Kentragina and Skill Drain is that because Kentragina's effect is negated, that means her original attack points become 4,000 and they stay at 4,000 unlike normally. So we have this huge beater that we can use to just start decimating our opponent here. We're going to draw one in the Nibiru, not the most useful card in the world. We're going to swing in over the Rise Heart, swinging in 4k with Kentragina, and just like that, Phyresia for lethal. Very different game. I just wanted to show off that the deck does have an ability to play through certain floodgates. It's not overly affected by something like Skill Drain, which is definitely annoying. It prevents your floodgates from working, but your floodgates only really prevent monster effects anyway, so you're not losing anything there. But yeah, interesting game. Playing against Shifter. Shifter is annoying, but your Dinomorphia fusion cards still work through Shifter, so that is another thing I wanted to sort of demonstrate. Even if your opponent ends up hitting you with Shifter, your monsters and materials don't need to be sent to the graveyard, they just are used as fusion material. So you can still play under Shifter, which grants this deck an ability that Mathmech simply doesn't have, and that's playing against Shifter. Regular Mathmech virtually instantly loses the Shifter. So yeah, another quick thing, we'll do one more game here just to show off some of the deck's actual weaknesses. Alright, getting into the next game here, going second, which automatically is not the greatest start in the world. Gonna go Upstart Goblin, drawing a card, giving us 1,000 life points for activating Runic Slumber. Of course, it is the Runic matchup. Luckily for us, Runic Fountain very soon going to 1 copy, which should limit the impact of control-based Runic strategies. We're going to meet him with a Maxi just so we can start drawing something, anything at all that may be useful. Fenrir is admittedly a questionable quantity in the deck. It does interfere a little bit with your Transcode Talker, so I could totally see someone cutting Fenrir. It was more of like an initial choice type thing. You could definitely cut this card out. In hindsight, I probably would. They're going to let us draw one for banishing a bunch of cards off the top of our deck, banishing 2 copies of Circular, which is very close to being dangerous, but we still have 1 in the deck, and 1 is all we need. Setting 2, drawing in the Fossil Dig. We're going to start by summoning out the Fenrir just to see what he's got. There can only be 1 is a very, very painful card, and the thing about there can only be 1 is that normally it completely shuts down Mathmech. Luckily for us, we do actually have the ability to somewhat play against this card thanks to our Dinomorphia cards. So we're going to see if we can at least pull that out. They're going to start drawing cards off of their fountain, +1. We're going to go Fossil Dig here just to see if he has an Ash Blossom or anything of that description. Normal summoning out the Pharesia, setting Dinomorphia Brute directly from deck. We already have Domain, so we don't need to grab another like fusion spell or fusion trap, which is where Brute comes in, because Brute can help us pop that back row if we need to. So we're going to activate now Small World. Going to try and grab ourselves a card. They're going to use Runic Destruction. They're going to pop our face down Brute. Very unfortunate, but it is what it is. Banishing a bunch of cards from the deck. They banished our Sigma, which is so fucking bad for us. We still have the Circular though. We're going to use Circular, sending Diameter because we have nothing else really to send. We can't summon out another Cyberse monster anyways. Taking out the Runic monster. Going to swing here. Sorry, we can't swing because of Circular's effect. We're going to set 1 and we're going to pass. So all we really need to do, and the Brute was like a double-sided thing, because number 1, it would have given us access, of course, to popping the back row, but most importantly, it would have cleared the Dinomorphia monster off our board, which meant it no longer would have been in the field under There Can Only Be One, allowing us to fusion summon right away. Right now, we need to wait until they get rid of our Pharesia. Gonna grab Flashing Fire, was that? Yep, Flashing Fire, targeting the Circular, gonna pop the Circular, continuing to banish cards from the top of our deck, and draw 3 cards here. This card definitely deserves to be at 1, if not less. Drawing another card off Upstart, going to activate another Runic Fountain. This shit is toxic. You should not be able to loop fountains like that. Continuing to banish cards from the top of the deck. They're going to take a card out of our hand as well. Banishing all 3 copies of Frenzy from the deck. They're going to go Runic Fountain here. Shuffling back, drawing another 2, +5. Inspector Border, Kaiser Colosseum, and There Can Only Be One. This, ladies and gentlemen, this is the meta that we're currently playing in, and I am out. Unfortunately, again, unable to fully pull out the win there. Runic is definitely one of the banes of this deck's existence, because, number 1, their primary monsters, or Runic Stun in general, first of all, their primary monsters, most of the time have like 0 attack, which means they're not impacted normally by Rexstorm too much. Well, they would technically be impacted by Rexstorm, but their main monsters are pretty weak, which puts you in a weird position sometimes. They play a bunch of Floodgates, which Dinomorphia helps you play through certain Floodgates, like There Can Only Be One, but it also doesn't always help. For example, it allows you to struggle against something like, what's the name of that card? Rivalry of Warlords. Rivalry then consequently hurts you rather than There Can Only Be One. There's a bunch of very interesting matchups and interesting sort of mechanics between the two that complement, but it does also make matchups against Stun, matchups against Runic in general, back row based matchups, even Lab to an extent is a fairly difficult one, because yes, you can negate all their monsters and prevent their monsters from activating. Can you prevent their field spell? Can you prevent this, their back row, right? So Lab have plenty of outs to you, and a lot of Stun decks have plenty of outs to you, which makes those particular matchups, anything based around back row, very difficult. So I thought I would mention it at least once and give a demonstration of it. I don't want to paint any deck as fucking immortal, right? Obviously not. But yes, that's the third replay. Let's get into the deck profile. So, first and foremost, the replays we showed off, those are the only decent matches we could really get while playtesting this deck. A lot of the time, what you'll see happening is your opponent will just instantly surrender the moment they see Circular, if they don't have like an out to it, or if you normal summon Pharesia. A lot of the times, more experienced players will just surrender, because if they don't have an out to it, they know that's just not going to work in their way. So lots of people just automatically surrender to this deck, which is worth bearing in mind. Again, made it a little bit hard to get decent replays, but it is what it is. In terms of the... And this deck, by the way, does reflect the new ban list. We're only playing 2 copies of Mining, just to be accountable with the new upcoming ban list, so that it is actually illegal, because this is being recorded pre-ban list. I'm probably seen. But yeah, this is the actual deck list itself. Are there any changes I would make? First of all, I would probably remove Fenrir. Very good card, helps going second an awful lot sometimes, but it does prevent your usage of Transcode Talker. So I would maybe cut the Fenrir entirely, and that just brings us to around 40 cards, which is really nice. You don't even need to replace it with anything. This is the deck. Now, why exactly does the deck work? What is the objective? Before I even get into what cards we're playing, your objective is typically to end with a Terahertz, with the Save Worm Engrave, as well as access, of course, to one of your 2 Dinomorphia trap cards. There are bonus things you can have, potentially setting Brute. You will also have access to your Super Factorial, so your end board, your standard end board, will be Super Factorial, Terahertz, and a Fusion Trap. That's the idea. Now, what does that actually grant you in terms of interruption? First of all, it grants you the Rexturn Floodgate. This guy prevents the activation of the effects of monsters that have more attack points than you have life points, and your life points will usually be at around 2,000 or lower. It gives you the Super Factorial, which gives you an Omni Negate and loops your opponent for up to 3 cards, depending on what deck they're playing. You can send one from hand through the Laplacian. You can send one from hand, a spell or trap, and then a monster from field, all to the graveyard off of this guy's summon effect, and he also gains an Omni Negate for your Diameter. And then, of course, your Terahertz is going to set up 2 negates, a spell trap negate for your Save Worm, and a face-up card negate from the Aggregator. So that's a lot of interruption to be packed into such a tight combo, and then you're also able to play a shitload of hand traps. Are all of the hand traps that we're playing perfect? Probably not, but these are the ones that we chose to run with. You can customize them as you go. Let's talk about the deck. First of all, on the topic of hand traps, let's remove the ones that are totally sort of flex spots and optional. Veiler, yes, technically is a flex spot. I would definitely recommend playing at least one, though. Number one, it's a very decent card to have in your deck. Playing multiple is not going to put you at any level of disadvantage. However, its most important quality is that it's the perfect small world bridge for this deck. Number one, your 2 main targets are Dinomorphia Pharesia and Mathmech Circular, of course, right? Veiler has one thing in common with Dinomorphia Pharesia, and that is the fact that they both have 0 defense points. It also has one thing in common with Circular, meaning which would be their attribute, meaning this is the perfect middle ground to go into both of those monsters, meaning all you need is cards that can go through through Veiler, and you can get into anything. So that means you can turn your Ash Blossom, means you can turn Sigma, means you can turn any of these cards into a Circular potentially, apart from maybe Addition, but Addition you can turn into a Pharesia instead. But yeah, it means that you've got a lot of flexibility with your small world, and a lot of it can just be focused through Veiler. Nibiru's a close second, but we'll get to Nibiru in a minute. So at least one Veiler I think is going to be almost necessary for small world. I got triple Maxi, triple Ash Blossom, both really solid cards. We have double Nibiru, which is totally optional. You don't need to be playing Nibiru at all. We are playing in a metagame where it's pretty good, so I would recommend playing it, even if not just one of it. But it can also be a bit annoying, so it can. So I totally understand if you want to get rid of it. It is decent small world sort of starter in your hand too. You primarily want to be playing monsters as hand traps. You want to be avoiding things like Imperm or too many copies, because the more monsters you have, of course, that means the more small world targets in hand you could possibly have. So yeah, you just want to play according to that. So the Nibiru is totally optional, but I would recommend playing it. We got double call by, single cross out, and a single Imperm to act as a cross out target, or just, you know, an Imperm, right? So that's all the flex spots, I would say. Most of the rest of the deck is just your consistency cards and your actual main combo pieces. So let's talk about the 2 main combo pieces. That would be Dinomorphia Pharesia and Mathmech Circular. Pharesia, very straightforward card. On summon, set a Dinomorphia trap directly from deck to your spell and trap card zone. That means that this card cannot be Ash Blossomed, because it does not add it to hand, it does not send it to grave. It dodges Ash Blossom's effect, it just sets it right to your field. It's still vulnerable to things like Imperm, but you know, what isn't, right? So Dinomorphia Pharesia sets one of your trap cards directly to the field. Now, what trap cards are we playing? We're playing Domain, Brute, and Frenzy. Domain and Frenzy are both fusion trap cards. Dinomorphia Domain will allow you to fusion summon using monsters in your hand, deck, or field as material. So then you're able to bring out something like Kentragina, right? Or just well, this one's normally Kentragina. Then Dinomorphia Frenzy allows you to fusion summon using one monster from your deck and one monster from your extra deck, which is a lot more flexible, I would say, than Domain. Because it allows you, number one, to go directly into Rexturn, because Rexturn needs a fusion monster as material, whereas Domain, of course, can't. Domain does end in Rexturn, but that's through Kentragina. It just offers you a little bit more flexibility and reduces overall the number of Dinomorphia cards you need to play in your deck, because the other Dinomorphia monster, Diplo's, fucking sucks. And lastly, we've got Dinomorphia Brute. which allows you to destroy one Dinomorphia monster you control and any card your opponent controls. Excellent way to play through floodgates a lot of the time. It's also really good to spot removal if you happen to open up with one of your 6 traps, because again, you're playing 6 of them. You don't need to search for them all the time. There's a very strong chance you're just going to have one, and you only need one, right? So if you have one of these 2 cards, either Frenzy or Domain, your Theresia search can be used on something else. You can just use it on Brute, right? Brute's not very good if you draw it without having a Dinomorphia monster, unless you also have one of the trap cards, because even through one of the traps, it's still technically live. So Brute plus any one of, 10 cards, 3 Thesia, 3 Frenzy, 3 Domain, and 3 Diplos, all still gives you your pop. So it's not very often a dead card per se. Yeah, and one thing I should note is all of these cards force you to pay half your life points to activate them, which sounds a little bit like a drag, but again, as I explained at the beginning, Rex Term limits the usage of effects of monsters who have more attack than your life points, so having really low life points is usually a good thing. So yeah, that's the Dinomorphia cards. Diplos, I didn't talk about him because he sucks. This guy's literally just a name. You need to have at least 1 Diplos in your deck for Domain. If you're a pussy, you might want to play 2 copies of it just to make sure you can definitely resolve this card. Diplos sucks though, so I'm not playing 2 of it. I fucking hate it. I only play 1. It's only here for its name. You need it for Domain. And that's the Dinomorphia cards. We're playing triple Fossil Dig to act as a non-once per turn Dino search for Thesia. Fossil Dig opens up the doors to a bunch of other things that you can do, potentially adding in maybe 1 copy of Miscellaneousaurus to make your Dinomorphia cards unaffected during your opponent's turn, if you're a mad lad. Again, it's very seldom going to be a dead card because you play 9 copies of your fusions, almost guaranteed to go into it. Basically 12 copies, with the 3 Fossil Digs. So between the 12 copies and then your Miscellaneousaurus, like even if you just hard draw it, it's very seldom going to be a bad card. And that's if you're not even counting Small World acting as 3 additional copies of Thesia. So that's what, essentially 15 copies, which is nuts. So yeah, you could definitely play Miscellaneousaurus. I think it would actually be a very good add. I wasn't playing it, so I'm not going to include it. But this card is probably something you want to add in just as an extra Fossil Dig target, or just as a really good card to hard open because it's just really good. But yeah, there you go. That's all the Dinomorphia cards. Very, very, very straightforward. We're playing then the Mathmech cards as well. Mathmech Circular. Sending a Mathmech from deck to grave to special summon itself, and if another Mathmech is summoned to your field while he's face up, you get to search your deck for a Mathmech spell or trap. That will be your super factorial. Now, whatever Mathmechs are we playing? We are, of course, playing the mandatory Sigma, because what you'll normally end up doing with Circular is you're going to send Sigma to the graveyard to special summon Circular. Then Sigma, while in the graveyard, so long as there's nothing in your extra monster zone, you can special summon this card directly to the field, but it gets banished when it next leaves the field. So this will summon itself, directly triggering Circular. We're playing Addition, which is just a free extender, target a face-up monster, special summon this, but you're locked into Cybers for the turn, so that is a pretty free extender. Mathmech Addition, and this is something I was planning on messing around with a little bit more. Mathmech Addition, and even to an extent your Sigma, both allow Thesia to be a bit of a combo starter, because you can actually just use Thesia as material for your Alimbertion, right? So that opens up a whole other set of doors. So I was actually tempted to play a more Cybers heavy version of this deck, maybe playing Subtraction and things like that, which is something we may experiment with in the future. But for now, just bear in mind that any of these big extenders allow your Dinomorphia Thesia to also go into an Alimbertion, resulting in you searching for a Circular, sending for Circular, bang, 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 setting up your whole play. So there's also a number of other options when it comes to those plays. So there really is a lot of flexibility with the deck. And then the last one we're playing is Diameter, who on normal summon will bring back a Mathmech from grave, so he is a decent normal summon, although most of the time you're committing that to Thesia, and he is limited to 1 by the upcoming ban list. So he doesn't have that number 1 slap by his name now, but he will do in a couple of weeks. And basically, this guy's only here because if he's used as material for the Exceed or Synchro Summon of a Mathmech monster, that monster, for the duration of that turn, has an additional effect, allowing it to negate the activation of a card. So it's essentially just an Omni Negate. It gives your Laplacian, which you summon during your opponent's turn, an Omni Negate. But yeah, the way these cards blend together is super, super great. We've already talked somewhat about Mathmech Super Factorial summoning out Laplacian during your opponent's turn. We've already mentioned all that. And the last card we're playing is Sign Up Mining for this package. Sign Up Mining limited to 2 by the upcoming ban list. I probably wouldn't play more than 2 anyway, though, to be fair. But yeah, it just gives you 2 additional copies of Circular. Meaning in total, if you want to look at this functionally, you've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ways of getting into Circular. Then you've got like 15 ways of getting into Phyresia, plus Alimbertion is a way to get into Circular. So basically it would change how you play the combo. What you would do is you would normal summon Phyresia, set one of your traps of whatever one you want, special out one of your extenders, being Addition or Sigma or whatever you have access to, because again, if we're assuming you don't have access to Mining, you don't have access to Small World, you don't have access to Circular, then what the fuck else is in your hand, right? You're bound to have something. So there's a decent chance you have an extender, and you could even bump these numbers up if you want to do it more commonly. But what you do is you normal summon the Phyresia, special out an extender, go into Alimbertion, use Alimbertion's effect, which we'll talk about in a minute, to detach its materials, to search your deck for a Mathmech, grabbing Circular. Then you can special summon the Circular by sending Diameter to the graveyard. Then Alimbertion tributes itself to summon out another Mathmech from grave, like Diameter or whatever it is that you ended up using. That triggers off your Circular's effect, and bang, you get 2 Cybers on field, full combo ready to go, and you just search your deck for Super Factorial, and you've already got your face down fusion spell, so that is full combo in and of itself. So there's a lot of flexibility there, which I really love about the deck, so it's definitely worth experimenting with. Really love it. That's the main deck. Let's talk about the extra deck very briefly. Again, if you've watched any of my Mathmech videos, 90% of this is self-explanatory. In terms of Dinomorphia, we're running 5 Dinomorphia fusions in total. Double Rexstorm, double Kentrigina, 1 Stealth Burge. This could be another Kentrigina if you have the budget for it. I don't see a lot of point of making this another Kentrigina, but you can if you really want to. So the idea is the Kentrigina, of course, 4,000 attack points, which you normally don't see because it loses attack points equal to your life points. So under certain floodgates like Skill Drain, this gal being like a 4k beater is really nice, but most of the time it's still going to be big, like between 2 to 3, maybe even higher than 3,000 attack points, but it's not going to be huge like this. Basically, this has an effect that allows you to banish a Dinomorphia trap card from your graveyard by paying half your life points to apply its effects again, so it essentially doubles up on whatever Dinomorphia traps you have in grave. Meaning, most of the time, when you summon her through the likes of Domain or whatever, you're simply going to use her effect to copy the fusion trap again and go into Rexstorm. So it means that she allows Domain to special summon out Rexstorm, because if you use Domain to summon Kentrigina, you send Diplos and Phyresia, then you use Domain again from grave to fuse Kentrigina and Phyresia to bring out your Rexstorm. If you're using Frenzy, you still normally want to bring out Kentrigina first, simply because paying half your life points again to use her effect puts Rexstorm in a much stronger position. She does also, however, have the ability to play Dinomorphia Brute from grave, which is also a very strong card. So yeah, Kentrigina, very flexible card, very useful in lowering your life points, but most of the time simply a bridge to your more powerful Rexstorm. Rexstorm, again, 2 main effects. We talked about them during the gameplay, but I'll briefly recap them now. He prevents the activation of monster effects your opponent controls who have more attack points than you have life points, and secondly, he can also at any point have your life points and change the attack points of all monsters your opponent controls to your new life point value, meaning it's very difficult for your opponent to just swing over any of your monsters because you'll Rexstorm reduce them, and you can use that effect, as far as I'm aware, in battle phase, meaning you can make it very hard for your opponent to respond to. Stealth Bird is here as fusion material. Again, you're going to be using Frenzy to send fusion material from deck to grave. Like I said, this could be a third Kentrigina. If you have a third one, play a third one. But if you don't have a third Kentrigina, I appreciate it's a UR that you probably don't already have. So in order to take the budget down a little bit, you could play one Stealth Bird. You could really, truly, honestly get away with playing one Rexstorm and one Kentrigina. One Kentrigina is tight. It's very tough with one Kentrigina. It means that it really limits your Frenzy. I would play at least 2 Kentrigina. You can get away with 1 Rexstorm if your budget's tight. I think 2 is definitely better though, because it gives you a lot more follow-up, gives your Frenzy a lot more flexibility. But yeah, you can definitely get away by cutting these ratios down a little bit if you're concerned about budget. Speaking of budget, or more specifically the lack thereof, we have the Mathmech cards. Deceive Worm and Aggregator are purely terahertz targets. This card in graveyard will allow you to negate a spell or trap. This one, when sent to the grave, will allow you to negate the effects of a face-up card. So they're just terahertz targets. We have Laplation, which we have briefly talked about. On summon, detaches between 1 to 3 materials and applies the appropriate number of effects. Number 1, send a random card from your opponent's hand to the graveyard. send a monster your opponent controls to the graveyard, and send a spell or trap your opponent controls to the graveyard. So in an ideal situation, if you time your Loplation right, you're getting rid of 3 cards. Why am I using these fingers? No one ever knows. But it'll also have an Omni Negate in the form of Diameter, so you're typically going to summon this during your opponent's turn, sniping up to 3 of their cards with an Omni Negate for another interruption. So Loplation, busted. Alimbersion, primarily a combo sort of target or starter or mid-combo piece. On summon, detach an appropriate number of materials to apply one of the given effects. The 2 main ones that you're concerned about are of course the 2 material and the 3 material. 99% of the time you're going to use its 2 material effect to detach 2 to search your deck for a Mathmech card. You will either, if you've already used Circular, you will search your deck for Diameter, because normally you would have sent Sigma for Circular. Or if you've done the alternative combo route that we talked about with Phyresia, you're going to detach 2 to search for Circular, right? Turns it into an extra searcher, an extra starter. You can, however, in certain niche situations, if you find yourself in this position, you can technically use 3 materials to search your deck for any level 4 monster. That means Alimbersion can also search for Phyresia. Now that sounds super niche, but what does niche actually mean? It just means you open up Circular and an addition, right? I'm just saying, as long as you don't normal summon beforehand, searching for Phyresia is a very, very powerful play. It can hurt your Cyber's plays though, so you maybe don't want to go into that because it usually takes up much more material than normally it's worth. But it is a possibility, so do bear that in mind. I'm just making you aware that you can. Linger Evil for the Link 1 if you ever need it. Not as useful in a deck that doesn't play Parallel Exceed, if I'm being honest, but sometimes just having that Trap Negate is super fucking clutch. Plus it's royal, fight me. But yeah, this is mostly here for its effect rather than its link arrows, but sometimes just putting one in grave is also kind of useful. So just something to bear in mind. Link Decoder, very key part of our Splash Mage combo. It means that if you were to use this card as link material for like a Transcode Talker, it summons itself back to the field, which is very, very nice. It means that you no longer need an extender in hand to go into Terahertz, which is fucking awesome, and it's one of the main reasons this deck works is actually Link Decoder, because it means that you don't need that bonus extender to go into Terahertz, which is huge. Also, Deceive Worm, huge buff to the Terahertz, so Terahertz ultimately getting buffed is part of what makes this deck so good. Splash Mage brings back a Cyberse, part of your key combo. Transcode Talker brings back a Cyberse Link monster, part of your combo. Jeagle and Crystal Heart brings back specifically Terahertz, which is a nice follow-up, or again, if you get interrupted, part of your combo. And then lastly, we have Terahertz, the actual Mathmech boss monster, I guess at this stage you could technically call it. And basically it allows you to send a Cyberse monster from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard, and it gains that monster's attribute as well as gaining 2500 attack points. It's primarily here because it can also attack a number of monsters your opponent controls up to the number of different attributes it has, so that's potentially 3 attacks, if not more, sometimes. So he's already dark. You're normally going to send a... Well, first of all, you're going to send a dark, then you can follow up by sending like fire, you can send water, you can send whatever. But normally it's going to have 2 attacks, maybe. That's pretty much the height of it, and that's if you get spicy with it. So 1 or 2 attacks, but either way, it's going to be huge. By the time it comes around to your turn, turn 1, he's going to have 5500 attack, turn 2, he's going to have 8k. By the time it hits your turn again, he's going to have 10,500 attack points, which is insane. So he's hella big, and through his sending to grave, you're able to send Deceive Worm and the Aggregator, both of which are very useful in grave. So yeah, it's a good effect. Really solid card. You could technically sub this out for something else if you really wanted to play fucking, I don't know, Singularity instead. You could do that. You could get away with Singularity. I think, personally, the Terahertz is stronger, but it does also eat a lot of extra deck room that you otherwise would have had available to you. So if you wanted to drop the Terahertz and play something like Singularity, removing Deceive Worm and Aggregator to give you a little bit more flex spots in your extra deck to play maybe Access Code or whatever, that's also a very valid option. I'm just putting out there what you can do. This is what I have done, and it worked out really well for me. So in terms of a full deck list, what exactly is it we would be looking at? Well, bringing back the full deck list, putting in our hand traps again, it'll be something along the lines of this. Plus we had 2 Nibiru, which are totally optional. I don't know if double Nibiru is necessary, but that's just what we were playing, so it's what's here. And yeah, there you go. That's the deck list. If you got this far into the video and you're actually still watching, then fair enough. Kudos to you, my friend. Like the video if you got this far. Of course, subscribe if you haven't subscribed. If you get any questions, comments, complaints, whatever you want to leave them in the comments, but don't be rude. It's not going to work out. Your comment just gets deleted. But yeah, good stuff, fun stuff. See you next time. Bye-bye.